Well. Hello, groovy audience. As you can see, if you're joining me live, it is a non-camera day, but behold, it kind of looks like I've got like a magic 8 ball on the screen here. So I don't know if I'm like the Oracle of Gen X or what's going on, but I played with the visuals and here I am. You only, it's like a disembodied voice with a little round circle in the middle, echoing forward. It's wisdom or non-wisdom or stories about elites eating mermaids. Yes, but if you're listening to this on the audio podcast, what I'm saying now will make no sense. So go over and subscribe to one of the live stream platforms and check out the video, because we are going to be having video footage today. Visuals and video and imagery is a huge part of this podcast, where we show you the evidence, come with the receipts or come with the stories, and we play around with the ideas of what could be happening. So remember, we are going live on Rumble, X, YouTube right now. We're live, so you can subscribe to one of those platforms. Simply go to genxonx.com, genxonx.com. All the links to those live stream platforms are right there. Same with the Substack. Same with the emails on there. All the audio podcast platforms are right there. I had a little bit of an audio issue yesterday, so if you guys hear some kind of tinny sound or it doesn't sound good, let me know. I tested it over and over again. It seems to be fine right now. Seems to be going good. I had uploaded the audio version of yesterday's podcast on Russia, and to my shock, the audio sounded like it was coming from a tin can. Basically, it sounded like I wasn't talking through my podcast microphone. It sounded like I was talking through my, computer microphone, which would not be good because it's far away and it's not a very good microphone. It just comes in the computer and it's older. So there wasn't much I could do about it. So I uploaded yesterday's audio podcast, and hopefully this will work out. I think I tested everything, and I think it had something to do with my guest. There was audio problems. So hopefully this sounds good. John Aside wants to know, how do mermaids taste? This is the Oracle of Gen X, and we're going to find that out. Actually, we have a video about it. And you guys are probably wondering, what the hell is this mermaid thing about? What are you talking about, Melissa? And I kind of tie it into all this stories about this sort of soul cooking stuff with Marina Abramovic. I don't know. It's bizarre, but we're going to get into that story. There's some people who say they know how it tastes. And there's actually something more macabre than it actually being a mermaid. So it's going to be strange. Before we get into that, interesting day. I have some really fun news. I always like it when I get free stuff, and it shows up in the strangest way. I went to take my dog, Petey. I tell him we're going to get Bootiful, but he's, going to get a haircut and his teeth brushed and all that stuff. And we got there about, 10 minutes early. And then I get a phone call in my car while I was waiting in my car from the PetSmart saying, hey, sorry, family emergency. We've had to cancel all of the plans and we can't get Petey in. And I was like, oh, dude, I'm sitting right out here with my dog. And they were just so nice. They said, come on in. They gave me a free treat, and they said, we don't have anyone to cut his hair, but we'll book him in on Tuesday and give you the whole thing for absolutely free. So Petey will get Bootiful, but it will be on Tuesday, and they're going to pay for everything. And that's so awesome. John Aside says it is his wife's 50th birthday today. His wife, Renee. Happy birthday, Renee. I'm so glad you have a great husband that mentioned this on here, and I want to wish you a great birthday. Everyone sits there and says, you Gen Xers, you're all getting old, but it's a privilege to get old, because not everybody gets the privilege to age and find out what they look like as they get old. So it's a privilege to be old and be wise. It's just, unfortunately, our society doesn't always value wisdom and age. So it's so sad. Now, let's get into the mermaid thing. I know yesterday, okay, we came across this because yesterday, guys, John Aside in the audience right now mentioned it. And I was like, what? What the heck? What are you talking about? Mermaids, elites eating mermaids. Like, to my knowledge, I mean, mermaids don't even exist. It's fantasy. It's fictional. It's not real. But apparently this is a thing, and it's a thing that started on TikTok. So we're going to go over here. And Joanna Side says, she says, thank you, and exactly, absolutely. There is something to be learned. Ooh, we've got to change this. I hate it when I have to have my picture on the left side. It's a pet peeve. All right, it's a pet peeve. Here we go. We're going to look at the article on this, Inside the Wild Mermaid Dinner Parties, and then we got some video. I'm pretty sure this originated off TikTok, so I don't know how serious we can take it. And John Aside, since you bring up this topic, you can chime in and tell me anything you know that's creepy and spooky that I don't know. It's feeling a little creepypasta to me, though. It's feeling a little strange, but we'll go with it. We're going to go with this because I had never heard of... I've heard of them eating babies. I've heard of the adrenochrome. I've heard of them doing child sacrifice. And I've heard of the spirit cooking, but I had never heard of mermaids. And apparently, this article from the Tab by Kieran Gelfpin says that mermaids taste sweet like scallops. Wow. Darn. All right, here we go. So Kieran says, I love a good conspiracy theory as much as an ex-criminally online person, but after falling down a Reddit and TikTok rabbit hole, I'm now completely believer in rich people hosting mermaid dinner parties. It's hard to track exactly where the conspiracy theory started, but according to TikToker Zach the Marketer, it was birthed after footage was uploaded to the dark web of what appeared to be people hunting mermaids. From here, people question what the purpose would be, and others have since dished on the exclusive dinner parties of the Hollywood's elite. This is like some sort of inner sanctum cult, but it's like the inner mermaid luncheon. I don't know. It gets sketchy and weird. Damn right it gets sketchy and weird. So it says, after countless in-depth recollections on Reddit and strange grainy footage. The grainy footage is always suspect though, guys. It's like when you see Bigfoot or aliens and it's grainy. It's a way to conceal some trickery in my opinion. So just so you know what I believe. Okay, so after all this grainy footage across TikTok, someone who attended one of the mermaid dinner parties allegedly spoke to TikToker Tiffany Hagen about their experience. The attendees' phones were removed, they were forced to sign NDAs, and then they were ushered into a dining room with a 5-foot silver platter as a centerpiece. A mermaid was allegedly under that platter centerpiece. And of course, there were similar stories on Reddit. Someone claiming to be a fisherman recalled his experience of hunting mermaids for elite dinner parties. Some eccentric rich folks look for something rare. We get one hell of a bonus when that tank's full. They penned in a lengthy story. I don't know. This is sounding strange to me, guys. I'm not so sure. So who attends these alleged dinner parties? According to TikTok Glam Ham, the mermaid dinner parties are frequented by huge Hollywood A-listers, notable politicians, military officials, and business tycoons. We'll get to this girl's video in a bit. She's called Tiff's Ghost Talk. She talks about the mermaids. In a more recent video, Tiffany revealed even more graphic details and a personal account of one of the parties from a man she named Jonah. And you know, this is like a whale of a story. Ha 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 ha. Oh, what a bad pun. So apparently Jonah is into exotic catering experiences. So he goes for everything. Snake venom, whiskey in Japan, endangered species in Europe, meal cooked in lava. So he just really was interested in this mermaid stuff. And apparently he said he paid 50 grand for a ticket. He was picked up by a black limousine and shuttled to an exclusive event. The unnamed host was in a white suit and matching masquerade masks, and he introduced the delicacies lost to the modern world. Reading the email, Tiffany repeated Jonah's view at the time. Their torsos were eerily human, slender arms, delicate collarbones, pale faces frozen in serene stillness. From the waist down, their bodies shimmered with blue-green scales ending in powerful tails. A server provided Jonah with a fillet of rich marbled meat that was in a golden broth and with herbs he'd never heard of. This must be Jonah. Let's see what he says.
It's very clear, okay? Mermaids do in fact exist. First of all, you have to understand that certain elites, let's just say, aren't like us underneath their, let's just say, costume. But aside from that, if you have the balls and confidence,
I think he's meaning they're lizard people. They're going down the lizard track. So this is definitely, we are in conspiracy land, people. I cannot guarantee the validity of this story. Let's look like here. Jonaside saying Diddy ate the mermaids. Renee says there's always been stories. Some people think Tom Hanks is involved. Renee says fishermen and Navy have had stories about these mermaids. Trader Todd says mermaids are fictional. Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah is the movie Splash. Was the only time I saw one. I love that movie, actually. I mean, I know we all know that Tom Hanks is allegedly a sketchy guy, but that was a great movie. And I have no doubt that if there was a mermaid, humans would probably try to capture it and eat it. So he's basically saying the flavor was exquisite, sweet like scallops, rich like wagyu, and with a depth of umami that seemed to awaken something deep in his senses. Okay, so interesting. The experience gets even stranger because Jonah reportedly had a transformative experience that he felt like a vibrational hum in his bone and blood. The other guests had closed their eyes, and Jonah himself had visions of deep blue waters and memory of life in the ocean. So there you have it, folks. Okay, that's it. But hey, you know there is a myth, guys. It's Japanese in origin, and I looked this up. I'm going to get to some of the videos on this. Share this video here. There is, if you type into Google, Japanese myth, mermaid eating, what comes up on the AI is a story about Japanese folklore. And it says, in Japanese folklore, the ningayo, or human fish, is a mermaid-like creature. And common belief is that eating its flesh grants immortality, or a significantly extended lifespan, though it's also associated with misfortune. So maybe it's a curse like a vampire. So examples in folklore are Yeo Bhikkhuni, an 800-year-old Buddhist nun. A popular legend tells of a nun who lived for 800 years after accidentally eating mermaid flesh. There's also the story of the fisherman and the fish. A fisherman caught a strange fish with a human face, and his daughter ate it, leading to an extraordinary lifespan. It also says that they can put powerful curses on humans who try to capture them, and the appearance of a mermaid is sometimes seen as a bad omen. But it's interesting that this sort of extended life, now, I don't know, a lot of this sounds pretty far-fetched, that there even mermaids exist, but maybe there was some kind of creature that, hundreds, thousands of years back that people coveted, that extended their life or provided some sort of youth, or I don't know. It's an interesting fact. It doesn't necessarily really appear in our mythology, but appears in Japanese. And if you guys find any other mythology in which it appears, let me know. It's definitely a Japanese myth about the mermaid, or as they call it, the Ningayo, if that's correct. So it's there with this extended life force, this immortality, so to speak. I mean, 800 years lifespan, that's a long time. That's a long time to see some crazy stuff. So let's play this video here where she talks about mermaid dinner parties. This is Tiff's Ghost Talk, and I believe I have another video after this. Let's just listen to what Tiff has to say.
I know what they taste like. You've probably seen the viral mermaid eating videos, but have you seen mine? Because mine's the original one. For some reason, it's not on the For You page, but I did get another email from someone that went to the party. They actually paid to go to the party, and they told me what they taste like. Let's read that email, shall we? We're going to call him Jonah because I think that's funny. As in Jonah and the whale, you know, and all of that. Jonah said, I had spent my life chasing the rare, the forbidden, the experiences that others whispered about but never dared to pursue. I had sipped snake venom infused whiskey in Japan, dined on endangered.
She's essentially just re-saying what I just said. Let's go look at her post because she has apparently lots of mermaid details. Here we go.
Mermaid party details that we've all been wanting the answers to. Talking the good stuff, like how you get invited, how they get the mermaids, where they're getting the mermaids at, where they find them at, who's getting them, things like this. Also, how they're prepared down to minute details, gory details. I told you all that this woman reached out to me, and she's kind of a bitch, I'm not gonna lie. Very arrogant, stuck up, full of herself. But she finally answered my questions, and I got that back today, so I'm going to read you a little snippet of it just to give you an idea. Dear Tiffany, so my son showed me your TikToks about the so-called mermaid dinner. He thought it was hilarious, especially the comments from people insisting mermaids aren't real and that parties like this couldn't possibly exist. See, my family already knows the truth. I went to one of these dinners back in my youth. It wasn't some urban legend, some fantasy cooked up by the internet conspiracy theorist. It was real and it was exclusive. My son suggested I email you my story, though whether you believe it or not is completely irrelevant to me. I've long since stopped caring about the opinions of people who will never be invited to such things. What I do find amusing, however, is watching the masses scoff at things that are simply beyond them. They mock, they doubt, they gossip, because that's all they can do. They're the kind of people that look at a locked door and convince themselves there's nothing behind it just to soothe their own egos. And before your followers start clutching their pearls over the fact that this is too well written, let me save them the trouble. I'm educated. This is how I speak. You just have to deal with it. She said, share with your little followers because at the end of the day, none of you will ever be invited. Her words, not mine. We are beneath them. See, I told you, she's kind of a bitch. She wasn't kidding. She is very educated. She did give me a lot of details, and I asked her a lot of things, all of which she answered. I asked the things like, why does it only cost this amount? I asked things like, why is she telling me? And she answers all of that. So if you want to know all of that, you can go find it all in my latest podcast episode. It's 25 minutes long. So if you want to know about 25 minutes worth of
Yeah, no, I don't know that I want to know 25 minutes worth of that. Apparently, in one of these videos, in the comments, what did they say? That there's this concept that if people are eating mermaids, we need to stay out of the ocean. They're going to get us. No, there was this idea that they weren't really mermaids, that they might have been like some kind of weird art concoction where they stitch like humans with fish and make it look like that in some kind of weird, macabre, bizarre art show or some kind of delicacy. That's what somebody in one of the comments were hinting at, that there is no mermaids, but there is how do you put it? It's like a Frankenstein's monster stitched up creepy creation that it's almost like how would you say, like a serial killer's art project or cuisine, like some sort of surrealism art twisted concept that defies, nature. We've got one more video here. Let's have a look at it. All right, we've got somebody else's view on finding the rich eating mermaids. Let's see what this young lady, Kennedy Jack 18, has to say.
Celebrities and super rich people eating mermaids? Now let's talk about it. Now I've been seeing a lot of people talk about this lady on here talking about how her friend went to this extravagant A-list party and they had mermaids on the menu, like actual mermaids. And that whole situation and story just reminded me of this Mexican actor Cantinflas. Please excuse me if I didn't pronounce his name right. But he used to have these extravagant parties where mermaids would be the guest of honor. He literally built his home for like the mermaids to be able to enter his home. Like this was his house. He had like an open pool where they could just swim up at night. And rumor has it he would have these extravagant parties with all kinds of A-list celebrities and like high up people. And the mermaids would be the guest of honor. And that also brought me back to where I talked about this specific type of mermaid, which is called a ningyo. And in Japan, these ningyos can bring on a bad omen. If you eat them, it will give you eternal youth. So if you eat it, you literally will live forever. And they say they taste really good. So when she said that, when the lady told her story time about her friend that said that mermaids was on the menu, it makes sense. Because in Japan, it's a legend that if you eat these ningyos, you literally will live forever and ever and be beautiful. And that is your curse, eternal youth. Everyone you know and love will grow up and pass away, and you're still going to be the same age forever and ever. It might sound good, but it's not really good when everybody you know and love pass away. So to me, it is not shocking that these celebrities or high up people are eating these mermaids. And I think we think mermaids as being these beautiful, exotic looking women, but in reality, they really kind of look like these ningyos. But they can, have abilities to shift into other stuff or, like there's different types of mermaids. So they don't all look like this. But let me know what y'all think in the comments.
Okay, let's go into the comments because there's some interesting stuff. The comment section is always fascinating, as I would say. Jane TTM22 in the comment says, mermaids equal the women who had Nephilim or giants with falling angels. As punishment, they have been turned into horrible creatures, said to hold knowledge from the falling angels. Some people are saying mermaid is code for aborted babies. Unborn children are in water. Uh-huh. Samantha Anderson says, well, this explains people getting Social Security at 350 years old. They went to one of them mermaid parties. Okay, it's interesting. Now, a lot of people are saying here they know the legends about eating mermaids because it's featured in anime, which would make sense because anime is Japanese, and that legend about immortality and eating mermaids is a Japanese legend. But very fascinating stuff. The whole mermaid thing is a way for us to focus attention on this topic while something else goes on. Yeah, it's a distraction, but it's interesting, and there's lots of videos out about it. There's lots of podcasts. There's lots of people talking about this mermaid concept, and it's interesting to attribute mermaids to fallen angels and having the Nephilim. We also have Genocide saying, like a golem figure. Yeah, that's a clay figure, and golem is tied to Frankenstein heavily. Renee is talking about taxidermy. Taxidermy is always creeping me out. There's something really creepy about taxidermy in horror movies. Renee also mentioned that as well as Japanese, Slavic, and African cultures have stories about mermaids, and I'm assuming mermaids in immortality, because that's the whole key to this, really, especially when it comes to Hollywood, is that immortality idea. Now, it could just be that we're sitting here in our culture, we're looking at all this plastic surgery. There's this idea about sort of adrenochrome and baby sacrifice out there, and we're watching these people Botox themselves up and surgery. You've got some actresses. I've seen a few of them lately. What's her name? oh gosh, she was in the Van Helsing movies, and she played a vampire character. She's British, Kate something. Kate. Oh, it almost came to me. Really beautiful when she was young, natural beauty. You see her now, and she's had so much surgery, she looks like a plastic doll. She's older than me. She's well in her 50s, and I was shocked when I seen how skinny and thin and the fake boobs and all of the work that she's had. It's shocking. And so we see this stuff, and I think, we can kind of create these myths around Hollywood and to sort of curses and how awful it must be to have to stay young like this. And some of it very well might be true. We're going to take a look and remind about some of the stuff we know that Hollywood does do, and that's with the spirit cooking. And I have talked about this so many times, guys, on my show, the spirit cooking stuff. Right, the Lobster King, Lobster King 17 on X, Lobster King. He's talking about, this was back from 2021. So this is stuff that's been well known. We've talked about this and some of the queer satanic imagery that was out around the time. And they were heavily pushing Satanism. It was so bizarre, these artists. But here's the spirit cooking stuff. This is Lady Gaga, and there's the body. You can see it down there. And these cakes they look like real human beings in like a pool of blood, and they take a long time to make these cakes. And it's just weird. Why, I know it's not a real human being, but why would you want to sit around with a bunch of people and eat something out of a pool of blood that looks realistic? You guys give me your theories in the comments. I don't know, but here it is again from a different angle. It's a woman, and it looks very realistic. And these guys are like, hey, cool. Now, Marina Abramovic will tell you she's not a Satanist. This is just art. But it's so graphic and gory, people just don't buy that. Here's another view of it. Here's Lady Gaga with a kid. Ay. There is Lady Gaga with Marina Abramovic together. So let's cut that out. Here's Blondie. There's her. You guys, Blondie is deep into Aleister Crowley. She's a huge Crowleyite. She actually got her band members into it, so she's huge into the occult. Blondie's massive occult. So here she is stabbing it. It's just so twisted. There she is again. There's some more strange Hollywood weird stuff. Here's Gwen Stefani. This cake's obviously already been carved through. She's standing there posing by it. It just looks kind of gross. That's Gwen Stefani at one of these things. Bodies on a table, heads sticking through tables, just normal stuff. Look at this. They're sitting here taking pictures. They're all eating their food, and there's heads sticking through their tables. Like, how bizarre is that? There's a body with a skeleton on it in the middle. Is that a fake body? I don't know. Maybe we'll never know. There's another head sticking through the table while they're eating. Hugh Jackman, he's at the spirit cooking. Now, maybe some of these actors just think, oh, ha, 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 it's kind of fun. Wow. So here's some of her art. She's got a lot of satanic art. I'll put a link in the chat to this so you can go check all of this out. She's so this is surrealism, guys. And if you know anything about surrealism, you know that surrealism came out of World War I art. One of the most graphic art going. And after the Great War and the horrors of the Great War, they really start to push this idea of surrealism. I did a show on it quite a long time ago. And surrealism, basically the whole context of this art, I love talking about this topic though. I mean, I did take a lot of art when I was younger, but I liked the classical art where you were adoring the body and adoring the creation of God. In surrealism that headed out strong after World War One, you're taking God's creations apart, cutting them up and reassembling them with other items so you can create your own thing. It's very macabre, and surrealism is linked to the Black Dahlia murders. The doctor who they really strongly suspect of doing it, he was friends with Man Ray, a famous surrealist art, and they think that he was the one who was doing a lot of these murders, including Black Dahlia, who copied Man Ray. Surrealism, it's twisted, it's weird, and a lot of times it focuses on the female form and the body and taking it apart. You also get like Salvador Dali surrealism. They were in with the Rothschilds. They'd have these surrealism balls, and he would attend these Rothschilds balls, like really twisted, disparaging stuff that all start to really go strong post World War One. And this is a form of surrealism. Here's more of her art. Like, why would you, like, this is really weird. And maybe, I don't know, a lot of these people try to say, oh, we're vegans, this is about vegetarianism, but there's something about, like, when you're a consumer of meat, if you're a traditional hunter, you really have respect for the animal. It's not about being a person laying on a pile of bodies. It's about what you need to nourish yourself. And you kind of have fresh morning urine sprinkle over nightmare dreams. Like, that's art, blood, gore, grotesquerie, like a horror movie, like a serial killer movie. She's friends with a lot of Hollywood stars. When I went and seen Lady Gaga in concert way back, and that was in the meat suit wearing days. Kind of gross, really kind of disgusting. There you go. So I will give you guys a link to this thread. It is from the Lobster King, and it is some twisted stuff. I'll put it in here. You guys on YouTube and Rumble will get this, because it's just it is so bizarre. And I tell you, this links to World War II and the crazy stuff that we went through. I think a lot of this Satanism, and we never got to this on the story of Lush in World War II, and I do have to move on to my other stories. I've got a whole bunch of stories today, but there's this idea. Oh, she's friends with my husband just reminded us she's friends with Zelensky too. Marina Abramovich. But the whole idea of war is trauma. And that's how they get the energy, the reptilian people. They talk about this. That's how they suck the energy out of you. Is they create trauma and fear, and it's like the loosh. They call it loosh. They get it, and you feed them. This is all part of it, and I'm not surprised that a lot of this crazy stuff came out after World War One, and then you've got World War II. That a lot of this crazy, evil, satanic stuff came out, and these two great wars really ripped apart Christianity. Now, not saying there wasn't violence and crazy stuff in Christianity, not saying that at all, but we seem to, as a culture, start getting into dissembling the human body and being more grotesque. And so, as some say, satanic cannibalism. Lee, welcome into the room. Lee Harrington's talking about satanic cannibalism. And is this just acting out a fantasy? There's like Armie Hammer, the actor. He says he has cannibal fantasies. It's there. I don't know how many do. So if he has it, who else has it? Who else has these fantasies? That's what I got for you guys on the mermaid. So if my guess is it's some kind of, if there is some party where they're having mermaid feast or whatever, it's probably like a human form with fish somewhere, and they've melded it like a meal to look like it's a real mermaid, but it's actually some kind of fish, like some kind of scalp or something like that, right? And because they have some weird fantasy and they're trying to play out stuff about, more immortal or some strange, weird, bizarre fantasy. Because that's the thing about art and progressivism is you always have to push the extreme. These artists are always looking for ways to push the extreme, and the more you do that, the more you step into depravity. It's very bizarre stuff. Jeffrey Dahmer, yeah. Well, Jeffrey Dahmer, obviously he was insane, but part of his ritual was he was watching horror movies and he was trying to make some sort of altar. His goal was to make an altar with the skulls and stuff of his victims, and he was doing so strange. So you guys can check a lot of this stuff out. It's all over TikTok, people talking about it, but they're talking about it in a more like, oh my God, and this is what it tastes like. But if it's real, if there's like really some kind of fishy thing going on here, pun intended, I think they're creating, it's something like this cake thing where they're doing some kind of mermaid immortal fantasy thing. They've got some kind of new gimmick, and we know there's all sorts of weird stuff about Hollywood, and they've got weird tunnels that they use to go places and hide things. The Tates are sex trafficking people, and all we've got a different breed of celebrity out there, even where the Tates are trafficking people and making it look like they're not, and they've got all these influencers that are like want to be around them. People want to be around celebrity. They want to be around all this grandiose bullshit. And they're not, I can't tell you how many podcasts feel like infomercials now. Like they just feel like stupid shit, whether it's Candace's or anything now. I'm convinced that the CIA and all that Mockingbird stuff, I've convinced they've long ago infiltrated the podcast. Because you guys remember when YouTube used to just be this small little, we'd post videos and respond, and it really was people. Well, it's corporate now. It's been corporate for a long time, and you can kind of see that. And all these podcasters are now these big influencers, and the same depravity is kind of etching through there with Tate, with all these people. You got these satanic cooking stuff. I think the lesson here is to avoid celebrity and avoid idolizing, and yeah, it's all sorts of insanity now. We are going to get away from the land of conspiracy, the land of the Lobster King here, and we're going to get into some politics. And I mean, I'm going to be talking straight up. It's hard to go for something so bizarre like this. That, yeah, some people think it could be a distraction story, very much so. But I think people just get fascinated by strange and weird tales like this. But we are going to get into the real part of politics. We're going to be talking about Canada, their new leader, the codependency, the EU, from welfare to warfare. And we're going to talk about Russia, Trump, and the response. And then I want to talk, this is going to be a long show, so buckle up. Fasten your seatbelts. I don't know if it's going to be a bumpy ride, but we'll see. I also, at the end, want to talk about the violence that Democrats are pushing on MAGA and different journalists, because it's starting to get scary and it's out there and people are being threatened. A journalist was just shot and killed, so we'll get into that. But let's check out Canada has a new prime minister that's been installed. As you guys know, our wonderful, wonderful Justin Trudeau resigned. And we're going to go and look at Justin Trudeau's last statement to Canadians, which made myself want to throw up. But here's his last words of love and how much he loves Canadians, even though he's destroyed the country. Even though he arrested truckers and called them Nazis because they were legally protesting, even though he's a fraud, even though he's drug dealing all throughout Canada and allowing fentanyl in phenomenal amounts through the ports in Vancouver and lying about it and saying there's hardly any because no one's tracking it. Whew. Here's his final message to Canadians, as he's being replaced by another psychopath who worked for the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada. Here we go.
I am so proud of Canadians. I'm proud to have served a country full of people who stand up for what's right, rise to every occasion, and always have each other's backs when it matters most. This may be my last day here in this office, but I will always be boldly and unapologetically Canadian. My only ask is that no matter what the world throws at us, you always be the same.
So I almost threw up when I first heard that. And I hope none of you threw up after I put that on, but it was just so grotesque and such bullshit. And Canadians are falling for this crap, this switch over from Justin Trudeau to Mark Carney. There are some Canadians who are falling for it. I don't doubt that they have a bunch of fake polls. And I have been going through Canadians getting upset with me on TikTok, or not TikTok, on X, basically saying because, America's putting tariffs on them, they're trying to fight back, there's all this crazy stuff, they're threatening to shut off the power, that Premier Rob Ford is a big dumb douchebag who says he's conservative, but he's co-mingling with Mark Carney, like they're little lovebirds, all this crazy stuff's going on, and Canadians have been convinced that this is an election between the Liberal Party and Donald Trump, as opposed to the Liberal Party and Pierre Poilievre. And the problem that's going on in Canada right now is they all have the same idea on Ukraine. And so it's, some crazy pro-war stuff. But Mark Carney is in, and he does a speech. He's trying to distance himself from Justin Trudeau, but Justin Trudeau isn't going anywhere. He's still behind the scenes. He's still going to be drug dealing fentanyl across Canada, allegedly. He's just stepping out. They're putting a new face in because people hated Justin Trudeau so much. So apparently Canadians are really just too fucking stupid to figure out that it's the same message, it's the same bullshit, it's the same lies, that it's just another face, another puppet for the WEF. There's probably Canadians who think I'm crazy because I'm talking about the WEF and this global psychopaths. But here we are. It's true. And the Canadians who don't know it are it's no wonder they're confused. They're getting upset with me. They're saying things like, how could you guys do this to us? Canadians, always been your friend. We're one of your only allies. They're going off on this old idea because they don't have a clue what's happening in the world. They don't know how the world's shifting to 3 superpowers and how things are going a different way and that things are being deconstructed to be reconstructed in a much better way, hopefully. They haven't got a clue. They believe the narratives. Yeah, they actually believe the official narratives that say, Ukraine good, I'm just trying to find, it's going to have to close up some windows. I don't think it likes me having so many windows open. They like official narratives. They like official narratives that say, oh, these people are evil and these people are good and I'm so super bad. And this person's this. It's very black and white, and they don't actually really understand how evil really functions in everybody. And everybody makes these really terrible decisions because they think it will get them in a better position. And they may not really even know that they're doing something evil, as it would seem. Let's go to Amuse. I believe he has the video that I want to share with you guys. This is of newly installed, and installed is the right word because he had 100,000 or more votes from the Liberal Party and some people to get in there out of 42 million people in Canada. So he's installed Mark Carney. He did a speech. He showed up in a hard hat trying to look like a man of the people. He is not a man of the people. He did a speech, and then when he leaves, he refuses to take any questions, nothing. He just walks away and hides. This guy is a puppet. he's 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 more of a puppet than Joe Biden. Check it out. So he doesn't take questions. He's too special. He's too important. He's not going to take any kind of anything because he can't answer things. He's talking about, aluminum industry and making Canada great again now. I don't know if he's using the great word, but contradicting something he just said a couple of weeks ago. Check out this video where this is the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. Listen to him here on CTV News in Canada.
Then secondly, what we're going to do is make sure not that the government pays, not that we as taxpayers pay, but the large polluters pay. And so what happens...
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean, not as much we used. So anyway, so that...
Have you ever heard anything so ridiculous? We'll just tax these big companies because how much steel are you using these days? I'm like, I don't know, but I know when you tax a company and they have to pay more for steel, they will figure that out in the cost of whatever products, and it will eventually trickle down to the people. Like, this is the guy that worked for the Bank of Canada. This is the guy that ran his own companies. He took his companies out of Canada and put them in the United States to have lower taxes. This is a guy who headed off the Bank of England. He's corrupt. For him to come in and say something so egregious like that, like, oh, well, whatever, we'll go after the big industries. Well, look, buddy. Lee Harrington says Carney is WEF. He most certainly is. He most certainly is WEF. He's also a member of other globalist organizations. But here's the thing. If you're going to put all these fees, environmental stuff, and then in another breath, a couple of weeks later, say you're going to build the aluminum industry and whatnot, your ass, your head's up your ass. You have to make an incentive for companies to want to make the steel in your company. If you're going to start charging them environmental fees and making it really difficult for them to compete and function in, I can understand some regulations, but this guy is nuts. This is this Keynesian economics that Trudeau was going with. I'm pretty sure this guy has it too. And the Keynesian economics came from Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He's the one who started to heavily push that on Canada and turn Canada slowly from a conservative country to a progressive, super ultra liberal country that believed in Keynesian economics. And it's just, it doesn't work. It's a nice idea that the government can show up and give you everything, but that's literally welfare. It's feudalism. It's like having a lord. Well, who divides it up? Who decides? Well, you're at the whim of whoever's in the government, just like you're at the whim of whoever's king. It doesn't allow anyone to come in and take advantage and do industry. If you're going to go after large companies, it's going to affect everybody because they're not going to build, they're not going to show up, they're not going to come into the country, they're not going to make companies who are going to provide jobs, any jobs that Canadians have, and steel will be gone. Trump wants to tariff all of them. Canada's always been tariffing. Like Canada's 200% dairy tariffs were meant to protect the Canadian dairy industry. You can understand that. But Trump's saying in reverse, well, I have to protect American interests. And Canadians are losing it and threatening stuff and going crazy online. Krista Freeland, she's out though. I mean, he's gotten rid of Krista Freeland. She's in the background. He's gotten rid of a few people, Mark Carney has, but they'll get other positions. They're just not going to be in his cabinet. He's trying to distance himself from Trudeau, but Krista Freeland was talking about having nuclear weapons in Canada to protect themselves against the United States. I thought, okay, that's a little much. It's getting a little crazy, but I've had people whining, and to me, it showed me how Canada's not really a real country. It is some kind of territory, and it's behaving thus, and it's getting angry because Donald Trump is pushing all these tariffs on them. He's pushing them to be more responsible for their own security and military, and everyone's scrambling. The EU is scrambling. Lee says Europe, Britain, and Canada are declaring war against the US. They're certainly trying. They're certainly trying. There's some crazy stuff going on back and forth, though. That we'll get to that. We're going to get to the EU in probably about 5 minutes. I've got a few more videos to find here, but they're just the insanity of it all. I suppose they could all unite together and fight the United States. I mean, I suppose that could happen. It's a real possibility. But there's also a lot of insanity about it, where I think they're struggling because most of these people have depended on the United States for a long time. Look at Europe. We'll get more into this. Look at Europe. How much money the United States sends for NATO to defend Europe. Meanwhile, Europeans are running around with a 30-hour work week, a month of vacation, all these social programs, and Americans don't get any of it. All our money is being funneled to scams, money laundering. There's nothing left for Americans. Americans are literally, being punished because they created their own country? It's insane. And I think now, when I come up to the European Union, you're going to see that their whole social system is probably going to suffer because they feel like they have to rearm themselves and become a military, and which is going to be scary because Europe's a problem. We'll get into that later, but we got a couple more videos to share because now not only they're all uniting, like conservatives are uniting with Mark Carney against Trump. They think they're running against Trump. This is so insane. So this guy, Rob Ford, who's the Premier of Ontario, for those of you who don't know or don't care, maybe don't care, it's okay. Him and Mark Carney are acting like long-lost lovers when they're supposed to be on different parties. It's astounding. Here we go. Check this out. There they are, lunching together. And I don't think it has volumes. Yeah, they're just like, hey, maybe this is AI. This feels AI-ish, doesn't it? It does to me. Doug Ford has always been the deal. He's always been owned by the World Economic Forum. Ontario voters are stupid. I think a lot of these WEF guys pretend to be conservative to trick people. I think that's what goes on. They're pretending. Yeah, Lee Harrington says Alberta wants to join U.S. Alberta's always been a very conservative province. I am not surprised by that one at all. Yeah, but apparently they're probably going to unite and just phenomenal. Oh, do I have that one here? I think I have that one up here. Oh yeah, we've got this video here.
Go to sleep, hush my baby, don't weep. Go to sleep, hush my.
They got their Toronto Maple Leafs stuff on. There's a strange thing that's happened, and I don't know, kudos to these liberals for figuring it out, but I've always said that Canadians were very, not just codependent, but passive-aggressive. And I had a lot of passive-aggressive guilt tripping that I was pushing America and that we were being cruel to them. And I'm like, no, you're being cruel to yourself. You're voting in idiots. You're voting in morons. You're voting in jackasses. And you're blaming everybody else when you're voting in leaders that have not made your country a strong country, that have broken down your economy, that's wasted your resources, that have, put up fraudulent businesses that are literally drug trafficking and making money with Chinese gangs, drug trafficking and killing people with fentanyl, making drugs illegal. Everything that's a priority is upside down, and everything that should be the basis of your country, your resources and your infrastructure, jobs, all that stuff is just like, whatever. And you're voting for a guy that works for the WEF, Mark Carney, who wants zero carbon. He is into this zero carbon bullshit. BC Hydro. BC Hydro just canceled it used to give out a sort of rebate if you bought a Tesla from the government. You'd get a rebate back. They have canceled their rebate for Tesla because they are mad at Elon Musk. And Doug Ford, this little fat chump, blonde chump on the left here, canceled the Starlink contract that Elon Musk had as a $100 million contract. He still has to pay $40 million if he gets out of the contract. So that's how smart he is. Here's what's funny about the BC Hydro move. This is the hydro company from British Columbia. Quite often, BC, British Columbia, and Canada will go through a drought. And where do they get their energy from when they don't have enough energy because the water's low? They get it from America. So these guys are playing with fire here. They're being very crazy. There's something so passive-aggressive and codependent about Canada. And I think it's because they've never really been a real country. They didn't fight. They didn't form. They don't have this real strong identity like America does for fighting the British. They've always been subservient to the British. And any colonizers that were subservient to the British and the Crown that didn't like what was happening in America left America and went up to Canada. They went through Maine into New Brunswick. A lot of my relatives were like that, and so screw them. Tough luck for them. I'm not normally. Who owns Niagara Falls? Well, it's split in half, Lee. Half's in Canada, half's in America. So split down the middle. It's very impressive. I love Niagara Falls. I've seen it. I visited it once before. So that's Canada, the codependent, crying baby whiners who are, battling this tariff stuff out. But what makes it bad for them is they've had a doofus run their country that destroyed their infrastructure and their economy over the past 10 years. So they're not in a strong position. I don't know what strong position we're in. Trader Todd said Canada owns the popular part. Canada owns the part that tourists go to because it's got a higher water flow. It's more full of water. It's, the more scenic part. So, it's going to get crazy. The American hate is getting crazy. You already have Canadians saying they're canceling their vacation to America. You've got them saying, Americans are pretending to be Canadians when they travel. That's an old myth. Canadians say that all the time. Canadians have been saying that for decades. That Americans pretend to be Canadians when they travel worldwide. It's just such a bunch of bullshit. It's a myth they've been told a long time ago and that they believe. I've heard it over and over again. And then, I have people going on like, you guys always picking on Canadians. And I responded to that person, told them to shut up. They thought I was American. I said, well, I'm actually Canadian. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard Canadians trash Americans. So why don't you STFU? Shut it up. All right. We're moving away from Canada. I don't know where it's going to end. I just don't think Canada's in position. I think all of the West is in a really bad position financially. And Russia and China are not in that same bad position. That is what I think. So we are going to move away from Canada and the United States over to the EU. And we're going to talk about how fucking jackass mad they are. Because they're going. We're going to visit some redacted. This is going to be a long show. Because there's so much news I want to cover that I have to do it today or it's no day. All right. So we're going to look at what Redacted has to say. They're a really good channel. I like to watch Redacted. European globalists just want forever war. So let's check it out here.
European leaders today are telling Europe to prepare for war. French President Emmanuel Macron addressed Europe last night, saying that Europe will not accept capitulation of Ukraine to Russia under the guise of peace negotiations. So like peace negotiations where people don't die is a guise? Okay.
Yeah.
Fool me. Okay. And the Danish prime minister says, quote, peace in Ukraine is more dangerous than war in Ukraine. Like, Europe has gone absolutely mad. Those are the words of the warmongering Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen. Listen to her in her own words, and here it is subtitled.
I don't think we should panic, but I think we are in a hurry. And I think we have been in a hurry for 3 years, but now we really have to scale up and to speed up because Russia and Putin is not only threatening Ukraine, but all of us. And we have to be able to defend ourselves. My idea about Ukraine is the same as it has been now for 3 years, that they have to win this war. And if we allow Russia to win the war, I'm sorry to say it directly to all of you, he will continue and they will continue. And maybe we will even give them a better situation than today, because if we end this war now with some kind of a frozen conflict, a ceasefire, it will give Russia the possibility to return to Russia, to mobilize more funds, people, and maybe to attack another country in Europe.
So what they're trying to do here is that problem, reaction, solution. They're trying to make people afraid that they have to go to war, they have to arm, they have to go get Russia, because Russia's going to rearm and come and get them. Russia doesn't even have the ability to get them. Europe's, all those countries combined have over 450 million, although their population is quite aging. Russia's got about 140 million. And they're trying to get people afraid that Russia's going to invade and keep invading. They're trying to be like, hey, he's like Hitler. Everybody's like fucking Hitler. Do you see their trauma? Do you see how crazy they are? Everybody's Hitler. They keep talking more and more about Hitler. And Germany's talking about nuclear weapons and everything. What they don't realize is they're the ones who are starting to behave like Hitler. It's so insane. Let's just watch a little bit more.
I have found the best way to look beautiful in seconds. These lashes have a hypnosis effect. As soon as you put them on,
Nobody pulled the microphone back and said, what proof do you have of that, given that Russia has specifically said they're not interested in any more than the contested regions that have been long since fired upon by Ukraine? So on what basis are you spewing these possibilities? Nobody's asking those questions. They're allowed to just say, he's coming for all of us, not based on any facts. I mean, this is a playbook from Orwell. This is 1984. Speak where peace means war and war means peace and death means life. There's no other way to see it.
Well, look at those microphones that are shoved in her face. I mean, Philip, if you can just show those microphones again and just play it without audio here, you can see Reuters, France 24. These are all. There's DW. These are all these are all corporate media organizations. Al Jazeera. But you're not going to get any independent journalists asking those questions, because independent journalism in Europe is not a thing. You have state-run media, basically. So that's what you have there. You're not going to get those answers. Elon Musk tweeted this. Then shortly after that, they want the forever war. How many more parents with no sons? How many more children with no fathers? By their logic, it never ends in Europe. So today is a huge day in Europe. European leaders coming together to hold an emergency summit over Ukraine, pushing for more war against Russia, while President Trump is pushing for peace right now. The cocaine-sniffing troll Zelensky, of course, was there in Brussels, today to ask for...
There's actually a problem. I think Trump might be surrounded by neocons, because they're actually pushing for a ceasefire, but they're not fulfilling any of the requirements that Putin needs. And Trump is actually going back and forth on this messaging. He stopped the funding and he's going, oh, let's do a ceasefire. And then he's trying to say he's going to send more funding to Ukraine. And I think Trump's making some really big mistakes there, because if he starts sending more funding to Ukraine, he's actually going against what Putin wants. And Putin wants Ukraine demilitarized and those Nazis that are in the area taken out of that area. It's a great threat to them. And I think as taxpayers, you should be really angry that Trump's talking about sending more funding and weapons to Ukraine, because he's talking about that right now. This was done before Trump started talking to that. I think he's got too many neocons around, and he needs to be a straight shooter, because there's no way Russia trusts the West. Russia has no reason to trust the West. The West has just backstabbed them. The elites, the globalists have backstabbed them too many times. And it's a big mistake. Trump needs to, if he wants this to stop and he wants peace, like he says, he needs to demilitarize Ukraine and not send any more money And we don't want our money being sent. I don't care how much Doge cuts. We don't want it to be sent. He's got to be serious about that, or Putin isn't going to take him serious. And I can't say I blame him.
For more money, for more weapons, to thank them for not ending the war. Those were his words. The unelected leader of Europe, Ursula von der Leyen, was also on hand to tell us how important attacking Russia really is. And she announced the new Rearm Europe plan. Watch.
Europe faces a clear and present danger, and therefore Europe has to be able to protect itself, to defend itself, as we have to put Ukraine in a position to protect itself and to push for a lasting and just peace. I present today to the leaders the Rearm Europe plan. The Rearm Europe plan.
Did you just hear what she said? We want everlasting peace, so we're going to push the Rearm Europe plan. Ursula von whatever her name is she's an elitist. She's probably from some kind of elite royal family. That bitch is so cold she could make ice cubes with her vagina. I am not kidding. That is a cold, calculated lizard bitch. 100%.
Provides up to 800 billion euros for defense investment. It gives the member states fiscal space to invest in defense. It gives the member states possibility to invest in the Ukrainian defense industry or to procure military capabilities that go right away to Ukraine.
Okay, notice what she said there. That was important. She said it gives all 27 European states the space to invest. Well, where do they get that money? Through debt. It's written in the plan. It specifically says that they can borrow the money in order to beef up their weapons supplies and their military. And in return, they get a pass in triggering the excessive deficit procedure. So they have a debt limit too that's set by the EU, and the EU is saying, screw that, take on as much debt as you need because we need to match the United States defense budget, which we have closing in on 900 billion. Now they're saying, because the euro's worth a bit more, we'll spend 800 billion and we will match them. They can't do it. They should learn from us because we had to go into debt in order to do it. And they're like, we like debt too. We can do that too. So who are they buying from? Who's going to make this money? This is not written out in their plan. Where are they going to buy it? Well, no. I mean, I suppose the World Bank, I don't know if that's really, we'll have to look into that.
Think about the amount of money that Ukraine is on the hook for in terms of monetary loans from the IMF and the World Bank. So just like Britain was after World War II, they were in debt to the United States up until about 6 years ago. Think about that. Since World War II, the amount of money that we let them use, and through loans, through the IMF, through the World Bank, that's exactly what Europe has been doing now with loans to Ukraine. So they will be forever in debt to Europe. Zelensky's basically there mortgaging his house. He's like,
Yes, but she's asking individual member states. Think about Portugal, which is already so highly in debt. And she's saying, take on some more in order to take on this war we are telling you to go into. So if you're a Portuguese person, you don't have any choice. Your government is going to sink the value of your money and your hard-earned dollars in order to go into this war that has nothing to do with you. Yeah, that's what they're saying. That's the mandate that they are putting on every European citizen.
Mr. Vintage in our chat says, thank you for the $20 super chat, says all these leaders banging the drums for war probably have zero chance raising an army. Everyone knows a young Danish, British, French man is going to refuse to go and die on behalf of Ukraine and these EU clowns at the top.
But how? How can you resist them, Europeans? You don't resist them for anything else that they do to you, which is odious.
Yeah, I mean, 80% of all your decisions are run out of Brussels. So in Portugal, 80% of your government's decisions are handled by people like Ursula von der Leyen, these unelected globalists. Mm-hmm. In Germany, the same thing is true. So Europe can just destroy Germany's industrial base and they have nothing to say for it.
Well, they're allowing Ukrainians to be taken off the streets while they're going to their job as a dentist and thrown into the conscription. Does that mean that that's what Europe ordains? They let Ukraine do it. So I guess they're saying it's going to happen to you too, European men.
What about your sons? What about your sons and daughters? So that question was asked of Ursula von der Leyen herself in an interview just the other day. Or will, all these sons and daughters going to war? And Ursula was asked in German if she would allow her Kinder into battle, her kids into battle. And she just laughed and said, "Nein, of course not." So it was funny to her watch.
Setup is a breeze. You just take it out of the box, put the comfy cover on, adjust it, put it on your couch or wherever.
Und es wäre ein Auslandseinsatz notwendig, dann würden Sie mitgehen müssen. Und ich würde genauso zittern und bangen wie jede andere Mutter.
Ist
jemand bei der Bundeswehr von Ihren Kindern? Nein.
Nein. I would never send my kids to war, but I'll send yours. Yours are fine to kill, but not
Nine. My kids aren't going to wars, but your kids are. See, I told you. Ice cubes in her vagina. That's how cold she is.
My kids? No, of course not.
Well, if you live in the capital, in the Hunger Games, you don't fight the districts. You raise them up to do that for you.
That's exactly right. Remember, Ursula told us that the Russian military is in tatters. Remember, she told...
Good comment here from Incognito. Ukrainian military-industrial complex. I smell a big military-industrial complex rat. Absolutely. This is totally America. I mean, the military-industrial complex in America needs to keep going. And I think they're trying to feed stuff into Donald Trump. Whether Trump's in on it or he knows, I don't know. No. I have no idea. But that's a really good point. So we have that commentary here.
Told us this. We covered this at the time, where she said that their Russian military was in tatters. They're using parts from washing machines in order to build their missiles. Where did that go? Where did that?
Propaganda. See the propaganda, and my guest I had on yesterday, one of the issues, I like Ward, but you could tell he, as a baby boomer, even though he had lots of experience and he had been in the military, my husband had been in the military too, around the same time as him, he was more into the medic part of the military, whereas my husband was in intelligence. So he has a better understanding of stuff and how intelligence operates. And it just really seemed to me like my guest yesterday, that's why I want to recover this today, that my guest yesterday had this very Putin's evil, Putin. He literally just said Putin has a really good scope of his history, and then went and said, but Putin's really narrow-minded. He can only focus on one or two things at a time. Contradicted himself. As if Putin can't focus on lots of different things. He's been running a country for decades. I just felt like he had, because he was a boomer, he probably had a lot of this Cold War anti-USSR sort of propaganda in his head, and he still sees things that way, and he actually doesn't see what's really going on, and that it bothered me a little bit. And we had a little some heat at the end of the show, because I told him that October 7th was probably allowed to happen by Israel. But anyways, I wanted to revisit this and all the ridiculousness happening from the European globalists, because I wasn't quite satisfied with that yesterday.
That narrative go? I think that narrative went somewhere to die.
Oh, that's the exact same thing that Barack Obama said. Russia doesn't make anything. He said they're just a languishing country. I saw this today on X called Russophrenia, the side-by-side narrative that Russia's super dangerous and can take over the world, and also that Russia is collapsing and hurting and terrible and a jalopy. Both things cannot be true, but they work for the narrative if you don't question them.
Yeah, watch this. So here's a look back.
Russian military is taking chips from dishwashers and refrigerators.
It's all propaganda.
Military hardware, because there are no semiconductors anymore.
You see that? They say all this stuff, Russia's crap, it's a falling apart country, it's backwards, but oh my God, we're so afraid they're going to take over all of Europe. Do you see the contradictory, crazy shit that they say? And this is why I was not happy with that show yesterday, because what he was saying was silly, old school retardation and didn't make any sense.
Russia's industry is in tatters. Europe is ready to assume its responsibilities. Rearm Europe could mobilize close to 800 billion euros of defense expenditures for a safe and resilient Europe. We will, of course, continue working closely with our partners in NATO This is a moment for Europe, and we are ready to step up.
All right. So that whole narrative was a sham.
Well, I love who was it? The woman we played at the Dutch woman who said, we've been in a hurry for 3 years, but now we're really in a hurry because Dad cut our credit cards.
Right.
Basically. Now we got to do it ourselves. We didn't think we had to before because Joe Biden had the purse and let us, do whatever we want. But now that Trump's got our credit cards and have been, our gold card was cut.
Well, he is the one cutting these cards right now. So President Trump is now cut off intelligence sharing with Ukraine. This was reported overnight in the Washington Post, and the BBC had it this way. Watch.
Donald Trump has ordered a pause in intelligence sharing with Ukraine as part of his suspension of military assistance to Kyiv. It's a move that could seriously affect Ukraine's ability to target Russian forces and to defend itself.
In a graceful unfolding moment, AI shapes a sanctuary of comfort just for you.
Here we go.
Yeah, just so you understand, they don't fire any missiles without the help of the United States. They don't track Russian forces. They don't launch HIMARS without the express use of American intelligence to launch all of Vitam Karapak.
Okay, here we go.
Or in like a few days or a few weeks. That's presupposing that you don't have the United States basically launching all of your missiles for you.
Right.
And
or
putting all of your targets in place.
Yeah.
And I don't think they have the people that can do that the way that America does. I don't think they have that ability to do those targeting and whatnot. I think they've depended on the United States for so long. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
So Trump shut that off. Now Zelensky's media TV hosts are calling for the assassination of the United States president. So this is Vitam Karapak, who said, "Where is Harvey Oswald now when the country needs him so badly?" And more.
Hey, this dude just called for the assassination of Donald Trump, referencing Harvey Lee Oswald. These people are evil. These people are fucking evil.
Then one calling for the assassination of President Trump. So that's one of Zelensky's state-run media hosts. They're calling for the assassination of President Trump. So I guess Americans should feel emboldened. We want to send more money to these guys. It's unbelievable.
That's regime change. We're supposed to be against that collectively.
Calling for the assassination of President Trump. So Marco Rubio called this out and said something we've been saying on this show for years, which is that this is a proxy war, of course, that what is happening in Ukraine is Western countries coming into Ukraine and using it as a proxy war against Russia. We were labeled as Putin apologists and propagandists and smear campaigns against any independent media that said that. Now Marco Rubio on television, after going to mass, says it, and now suddenly now Fox News can say it? Watch.
It's been very clear from the beginning that President Trump views this as a protracted, stalemated conflict. And frankly, it's a proxy war between nuclear powers, the United States helping Ukraine and Russia. And it needs to come to an end. And no one has any idea or any plan to bring it to an end. The plan of the Ukrainians up to now and their allies, Capitol Hill and the people you talk
was not his narrative since the start of the war. So I'm confused that all of a sudden he gets...
So we're going to pause this and we're going to go and watch Russia's response. There was a live video from the UN, and here, let's check it out because we want to get in a little bit from Russia, because a lot of these ceasefire deals that they're doing right now with Zelensky, et cetera, they're not really... They have to go by Russia. They haven't talked to Russia about it, and I don't think Russia's going to buy it. It seems like a trick, and I agree. It seems like a dirty trick. So let's see. This was, let me read the Russian permanent representative to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, condemned the EU for obstructing U.S.-Russia dialogue on Ukraine, labeling the bloc as an apologist of war during a UN Security Council meeting in Geneva. He criticized EU leaders, citing remarks from Danish PM Mette Frederiksen and Estonian PM Kaja Kallas, accusing them of blatant Russophobia. Okay, so here's this commentary. I'm not sure when this happened. This was posted March the 12th, 2025. So I'm assuming this is relatively recent.
Today's discussion of the UN's relationship with the European Union and the role of this union in international efforts to ensure peace and security is taking place in a special setting. We can state that by the beginning of 2025, the degradation of the European Union from an economic project called for by the cooperation of former opponents and enemies to prevent a new war in Europe, politically applying all efforts to sow hostility on our continent and to provoke this hostility and war, is almost over. The once healthy integration club that promoted cooperation projects with Russia has today finally turned into a stubborn and aggressive Russophobic bloc that has put its energy, economic, social, and financial well-being at stake in a senseless confrontation with its eastern neighbor. Today, as never before, it is obvious that the European Union is rapidly losing this confrontation. Today, it is also quite obvious to call the key miscalculations of the EU Brussels, which have led to such a deplorable situation for the bloc. In particular, I would like to highlight the latest large-scale expansion of the EU since 2004, when some states became members of the bloc for political reasons, which were not fully conformed to the criteria of membership formulated by the EU itself. As a result, the EU, with its Russophobic cockroaches in its head, included Poles, Baltics, and some other young Europeans suffering from a complex of sharp historical revanchism. Over the course of more than 20 years, we can say with regret that these cockroaches have been breeding and settling in the heads of those who have not only not suffered from Russophobia over the past decades, but also advocated for the development of mutually beneficial cooperation with Russia. This process was gradual, but negative changes became more and more noticeable. Thus, in 2008, the policy of Eastern Partnership was formulated, aimed at breaking the mutually beneficial ties between Russia and its neighbors and their reorientation to the EU. Ukraine became its main victim, where the West began to consistently implement the anti-Russia project, forming and promoting hostility to all Russians, which was consistently presented as a threat to the future of this state. Its elite imposed unprofitable economic deals, which implied a complete breakup of the common economic space with Russia and any kind of goodwill with it at all. The epitome of these efforts was the anti-constitutional coup in Kiev 6 years later in 2014, and 3 EU countries, including France, Germany, and Poland, became direct directors and producers of it. It was they who did not keep the promises and guarantees given to the former Ukrainian president Viktor Yanukovych and did not insist on the implementation of the radical opposition of the prisoners with the help of the agreements. Well, what happened next is well known. The nationalists who came to power launched a real war to destroy the peaceful Russian-speaking residents of Donbass, thus provoking an armed conflict within Ukraine. It could have been stopped with the help of the Minsk agreements and the imprisonment of 2 EU members, Germany and France. However, as we already know well from the confession of former leaders of these states, the Kiev regime was not going to implement them, and Berlin and Paris, instead of forcing it to do so, used the Minsk process exclusively as a smokescreen in order to arm Ukraine and prepare it for the war with Russia. And since the slaughter of the Russian-speaking population, which killed more than 10,000 people, did not stop, but intensified significantly by February 2022, we had to start a special military operation. After that, the EU, on the Russian-speaking soil, what is called, completely tore the roof off. It abandoned the cheap Russian energy sources, according to the principle of evil eyes and ears from the outside, without hesitation swallowing the explosion of the North Stream, and plunged its economy into a deep crisis, imposing sanctions on Russia, from which it suffered in the end.
You see what they were doing is typical of psychopaths and sociopaths and someone who's trying to invade you. They were trying to isolate Russia from all of its allies and people around its borders, and so that they had no one to help fight them. It's probably why Russia became allied with China and other nations. They forced this card. They forced BRICS. This is them. They've always been trying to pretend that Russia was the the main villain here in their little freaky narrative. And it's just not true. It's why I don't think Ward Clark, as nice of a guy as he is, I'll never have him back on my show, especially talking about Russia, because he is just so malinformed about what happened and how these elites, of Europe, I think they for a very long time wanted to invade Russia. And guess what Russia has? Tons of resources, tons of farmland. They treat it like it's like they said, in one instance, it's, it doesn't do well. They lie. They're tractor farm pieces, and then in a couple of years later, they're so dangerous, they're going to take over Europe. It's all projection. It's all lies, manipulation, and projection. Europe is doing it over and over and over again, villainizing Russia when they are the ones who are truly violent, and they're the ones who are trying to invade Russia. They're the ones who have grown. You can just watch the map. It hasn't been Russia. I was so disappointed in my guest yesterday. So absolutely disappointed in this sort of Cold War rhetoric that he had inside his head, because, and I don't, even if you played this for him, he would probably counter argue it. Like when I said, well, Putin is really actually pushing Christianity. It's a Christian nation. He's really pushing it. He's not pushing Marxism. That's not true. His response was, well, if Christianity is thriving in Russia, it's just because Putin wants it. What a retarded and ridiculous. I just thought that was such a ridiculous response. Oh my God. It was crazy. I'm not saying Putin's an angel and there's not any problems, and there hasn't been problems in the future. But I think we need to take a really hard look at the psychopath in our own nations who are trying to invade another country like parasites. My guest, Lee Harrington, was Ward Clark. He's a really great guy, a nice person, lives up in Alaska, does journalism for Red State, but his concepts on Russia was just old school, Putin bad, Putin evil, and I just can't have that shit on my show. That's why I wanted to recover this. So let's continue on here.
It began to try to prohibit Russian culture, reaching absurdity, for example, by renaming Russian artists to Ukrainian, and threw all his strength to finance the war in Ukraine, in the desperate hope that Zelensky's regime would be able to inflict military defeat on Russia. And when the new U.S. president announced a new Washington course to achieve a peaceful settlement of the Ukrainian crisis, the European Union became an appellate agent of war, having finally completed its mission. And today, it is applying all its strength to prevent the American-Russian dialogue in Ukraine. To illustrate this, it is enough to recall the recent statements of the Prime Minister of Denmark. I quote, "Peace in Ukraine is more dangerous than a continuing war." The comments are, as they say, superfluous. Mr. President, some countries today are crumbling because we are not engaging in a dialogue with Europe. Russia has not had a dialogue with the European Union for a long time, not because we interrupted this dialogue, but because it was done by the EU countries, and there are almost no interlocutors in Europe for us. Today's meeting is a great illustration of this, because the new High Representative of the EU on Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, the frank Russophobe Kaja Kallas, spoke at this meeting. She is well known in our country. We remember her words, which were said in the presence of the Prime Minister of Estonia, that, I quote, "Defeat of Russia is not so bad, and that it is not so bad if a large power becomes smaller." End of quote. Already at my new post, I fantasize about...
Well, I mean, we could say the same about EU or any kind of power. Russia has a vast history that they remember, and when you talk to Vladimir Putin, he remembers that. I'm not going to do any more of this video. I will actually put the link to it in the show notes so you guys can check it out. But he really drives it out, what happened, and everyone says, oh, the Russians lie, the Russians have propaganda. Sure, I'm sure that they do, but I don't doubt I don't doubt for an instant that America probably lies more and better and more skillfully with all their propaganda and their films and their movies. You think about the propaganda that we have against Russia. I mean, it's thoroughly done within films. James Bond is just one example of, Russians and bad Europeans, right? And there are some bad Europeans. If you want a good example of bad Europeans, just look at Ursula and her ice cube maker. Just take a look at her, because she's a bad European, and it's really insane all of this stuff that's happening that people like Ward can't see it. A lot of us are brainwashed. A lot of us from any generation we grow up in have things we're brainwashed about. You have to have an open mind and listen. And I know, I don't think that Ward does. When I would ask him stuff, well, what about the, in Ukraine? What about the conflicts? What about the money laundering? What about Zelensky? He's not even elected. He was put in, by that sort of, what do they call it? Color revolution. He changed the subject and went off and, I don't know. It was obvious to me that I had somebody on that really didn't know what they were talking about. And the European Union, it's the one that's too big. It's too big. 450 million people in all these different countries that are dead set on war, that are like war-hungry mongers who says that peace is more dangerous than war to them. The only reason that peace would be more dangerous than war to the European Union is if they had some plans to invade, and that stopped their plans. Russia's going to win this. Trump better smarten up and stop with the whole start sending money to Ukraine again. That is a bad move. Trump needs to stop listening to neocons, because all of those people in the government, they haven't cleared everybody out. Those people are greedy pigs. What's his name? Lindsey Graham. He's a greedy, disgusting, pedophile pig, allegedly. He's a pig. And he wants war in Ukraine. These guys are evil monsters. You got to think that, like, how can they be so evil that they want to murder all these people so they can get money and resources in Ukraine? Okay. Instead of them, making connections and stuff with people and making deals, they just want to murder them and take over. That's what they want to do. And they're accusing Russia of the same thing that they're trying to do. All the while isolating Russia, isolating them from allies, trying to create all sorts of problems. Zelensky's got a hit list. We're going to get into that, because for the last 20 minutes or so, we're going to talk about some crazy stuff that's been happening to MAGA and how the Democrats are going jackass mad on us. But this whole thing with Russia is crazy, and it's hysteria. Russophobia is a good name for it. It really is. And you see that the European Union is a monster that's gone too big, but I don't think it's a very organized monster. It's depended on the United States for a long time. And all this talk of rearmament, it's going to take them a long time to catch up. They literally use oil and gas from Russia. They get a lot of their stuff from Russia. Russia has helped them out a lot during the pandemic. Russia has never, gone out and invaded their country. It's not even going to happen. It's not even possible. It's not even logical for Russia to invade their country. These guys are sniffing too much Mein Kampf, And really, the European Union now is what Hitler always wanted. So they're really more dangerous than Russia is at all. I don't know about China. China, it poses a danger in some ways, but the European Union declaring the United States as their enemy and all this stuff, talking about, rearmament, if we're not sending them money, and I hope we don't, I hope we leave NATO. If we're not doing that, if we're not sending them money, their cushy days, their citizens' cushy days of getting paid vacations and having a month off and only working, 4 days a week, that's going to be over. And they're not going to like that very much, because America's been flipping the bill for a lot of these countries for a long time and taking away from their own citizens. So hopefully that that one's over. And Donald Trump, you better not send money. I'm telling you, better not be sending money to them. All right. So that's that. We've got to cover my last story. And I'm sorry the show is so long, but I won't be able to hear until at least next Wednesday. So I thought we'd cover everything all at once. We're going to talk about how fucking crazy the left is. You guys know it. I know most of the people in the audience knows how absolutely batshit crazy the left is getting. And there's so much violence being carried out right now. I'm just going to share this story on the screen right now. Many of you may have known that journalist Jamie White, who worked for InfoWars' Alex Jones, was brutally murdered. Now, it's suspicious. They're saying that the cause of the murder was he wasn't targeted. They're saying it was carjacking. But I'm going to tell you something. Jamie White was on a hit list. He was on the Ukrainian hit list, along with many other American journalists. And Ukrainians have already murdered an American journalist, by the way. Just so you know, he let some information out. And he was already murdered by Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are full of Nazis. They've made tons of threat. It's quite possible that the Ukrainians did the attack on X. The other day, there was a massive cyber attack. I was out for 24 hours. Jamie White was one of the people on the Ukrainians' hit list. Could it be them? Possible. But if it was a carjacking, you know, in Texas where he lived, the DA, the Hispanic DA guy there is total Marxist. He won't even, if you're a Hispanic person and you murder or shoot a white person, they won't do anything about it. They hate white people. Austin, Texas. Alex Jones was just talking about it. Now, Jamie's family is talking about that they don't believe he was targeted either. They said Jamie White was killed late Sunday near his Texas apartment in a suspected homicide. His family confirmed. I don't believe it was targeted. White's sister Kelly Neal told The Independent he was shot by a person or persons trying to break into his car for the second time. Kelly explained that her brother's car had first been broken into when he was home for Christmas. It was a tragic accident, but we haven't heard much else. White's death was first reported on Monday afternoon when far-right radio host Alex Jones announced it on his broadcast, saying that his best reporter had been brutally murdered. Jones accused Austin's Democratic District Attorney, that I was just talking about, and other Democrats across the country of aiding and abetting in White's death by failing to control crime. It's true. These DAs don't do anything about the crime. It just goes, unchallenged. The Austin Police Department said in a statement on Tuesdays that officers responded to the call of the shooting at the Chandelier Apartments located in Douglas Street. Yeah, when they came, White was laying on the ground, a lot of trauma to his body, a lot of blood loss. He was pronounced dead at 12:19 a.m. And this isn't the only time. This isn't the only thing that's happening. We're going to go over to Alex Jones' Twitter because another journalist was threatened. Nick Sorter has been swatted and sent death threats. Let's have a look here. Here we go. Here we go.
Connick sent him a message before he did it, targeting his family. I'll post Nick's breakdown below. But we are now in the terrorism phase, the open terrorism phase of the Democratic Party. All the fire bombings, attacks on Tesla dealerships, people trying to scale the fence to shoot the president at the White House, all of it. And the Democrats' mouthpieces all over corporate television, The View, all of it saying, Trump's coming to kill people, he's killing people, and we need to be ready to fight and die. That was the admitted plan of Carville and Raskin, all of them, if Trump won, was civil war conditions and uprisings. That was John Podesta's war game if he won. He bragged about it in the New York Times. And they're just going to escalate and escalate and escalate. So, the psychotic sends out an email, tells Sorter what he's going to do, and then the police come to kick down his dad's door. They go to his sister's house because they said that they were there killing their family, that his dad was there murdering everybody. This, of course, happened 2 nights ago 2 different swatting events against my great reporter, Chase Geiser. And of course, we had Jamie White, our reporter, great reporter, shot through the neck and killed in Austin Sunday night. And of course, they haven't found out who did that, but they just think it's random. So this is going on everywhere. They did arrest the people that were swatting MTG over and over again, trying to get her killed. But this needs to be one of the main focuses of the Justice Department. And I know they got a lot of stuff to do, but this has got to happen. But just think about how conservatives, how populist, we're not the drama queens the left are. Imagine if we were doing this to them, which we would never do. But sending police to somebody's house saying that someone's there killing their family, that's what they said Chase had tied up his wife and kids and was going to kill them.
There needs to be consequences for swatting. It's like one of their weapons. They hope that, a SWAT team will show up and blow your head off. There needs to be consequences for this stuff.
And they, loudspeakers, called Chase to come out, made him walk out backwards, all these guns pointed at him. One of them could have, pulled the trigger easily. That happens all the time in these swatting raids. People die. And you see the cases where the police also go to the wrong house or address and kill people. They're trying to use law enforcement, which is an instrument of death, with their firearms, designed to protect the public, to then point it at the people. And I know that goes without saying, but what Nick said, and I'll post it below, is absolutely on target. This has only made his family stronger, only committed them all more. Nick's over the target.
So sociopaths and psychopaths always use the system against you. They are very manipulative, so they figure out, how to use the court against you and lie. They figure out how to use, swatting system, law enforcement. This is the trait of psychopaths. Just so you know, guys, they always will use the system against you and think of ways to try to kill you, get rid of you, destroy your life. They're literally evil, and they do this all the time. Lawfare, the system, they find out how to infiltrate it, they learn about it, make up shit and stories, and they don't care. They're distanced from it. They don't have to do it. They don't have to experience all the trauma. They really don't care. All because they're having tantrums. Total MK Ultra, by the way. All these people who are having fits, who think Trump's evil, they are mentally ill, mentally unstable, totally crazy. This is totally mass hysteria, MK Ultra. They're just being triggered by stuff. The media built up a story about Trump, built up a story about Russia, built up this story, and they can just say, they have trigger words. That's why they repeat things over and over and over again in the media, so that when Trump wins, they just say it's Hitler, he's killing people. They say the words over and over and over again, and people will start activating. Whether they are paid by the government or whether they're independent Marxist groups who are not funded by the government, they'll go out and do crazy things. He's talking about all this violence. We got people bombing Tesla stations, Tesla cars, Tesla dealerships. One guy tried to put a Molotov cocktail on a Tesla's charging station, and it lit him on fire. I don't know I think he may have died from it, but just crazy, radical, insane stuff. And it's all being triggered by the Democratic Party. This is their warfare. They're terrorists. They know very well how to create terrorism. They do it all the time. They create terrorists in all the other countries. That's how they take over, by creating terrorists and terrorism. They're masters at it. Where do you think all the terrorists come from?
He's an incredible journalist, reporter, reaching hundreds of millions of people a week. And it's just absolutely outrageous, the point that we've gotten to in society now. And we cannot give in to this terrorism. It's only going to get worse if we do that. And that's what terrorism is all about. This is the definition of terrorism: is threatening violence or carrying out violence for a political aim. And that's what they're going into now. And as General Flynn said yesterday, the false flags are set. They're already pre-programmed attacks on migrant demonstrations we blamed on Trump. It's a very, very dangerous time in society right now. And so everybody's got to have their head on a swivel, because we're winning. Trump's turning the economy around. They're trying to sabotage that. So I just hope and pray that all of you realize that all of your voices are so important right now, and all of your prayers are important, but all of your support of those of us that are under attack is so critical, like Nick Sordor, InfoWars, everything we're doing. I'll be on the air today at 11 a.m. Central. Real Life shows on.
Okay, so that was Alex Jones talking about these attacks. Like I told you, they're all over the place. There's Marxists. They are marching. They put their stuff out there. They do zines and get their stuff out there, whether they're funded or not. A lot of them are self-funded. There's a lot of these guys who are teachers. They feel this as an assault on their radical, fucking insane ideology. And they think they're dealing with Hitler. And most of them are mentally unstable, and many of them are teaching your kids. Let's see. Now we have Rep. Maxine Water. This is our last example of the day of how these assholes trigger violence. They keep saying stuff over and over again. They don't actually tell you to do it, but they say things that trigger people and violence for people to do it. And they know exactly what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They're calling for violence. That European mofo that called for assassination of Donald Trump, he didn't say it, but they're speaking around it. They know what they're doing. And they're cold, calculated assholes. And are really twisted. And these guys deserve a fate worse than death. And so this is this bitch. Lee Harrington said they got multiple jabs and are being triggered by radiation from the towers and 5G Wi-Fi is what I have read. I've read that stuff too. It's possible, but I think a lot of times all they have to do is put the programming in their head by repeating news stories and stuff over and over again, and it literally gets transferred around like telephone. I mean, most of the stuff on World War I, World War II, and the outcome, all that, it's all propaganda. We don't really know what the truth is because, of course, the victors write the narrative. So this stuff is crazy. We're going to go and watch Maxine Waters, my favorite Democrat, useless tit that needs to go. This is a very quick 10-second clip, so watch what she says.
What does Trump expect? Oh, I believe he expects violence. I believe he expects confrontation. I believe he's working toward a civil war.
So she's projecting. She's telling you they want violence, a civil war, they want conflict. Well, the only reason Trump's expecting it is because that's what you motherfuckers do all the time. You create terrorists, you're violent, you bomb places, you create chaos, you get these drug addict, half-baked Marxist kids and Antifa out on the streets, bombing things, destroying things. You guys have threatened Elon Musk's life. You threatened many conservatives' lives. You threatening Donald Trump's life nonstop. You guys have even tried to assassinate him. That might have been even linked to Ukraine. That assassination back in July. These guys are constantly violent. They're mad. Their money's being cut off. They're pissed. He's undoing the system. He's undoing all their bullshit. And they want to create as much chaos and stop it as possible. They all stand there in their suits and everything. I really hope these guys get their comeuppance that they deserve. These are not normal people. These are psychopaths. These guys are all paid by some power way above them. Some psychopath power way above them. They're not in control, and you can tell they all repeat the same things. You even are seeing some weird conservative influencers who will repeat the same thing as well. Yeah, Lee Harrington says she's an agitator. She is a super agitator. She agitates me. And they're trying to invoke this violence. And the idea is to stay calm and keep talking. There's a lot of violent people out there. There's a lot of people attacking, murdering, just trying to destroy the whole system. They want to destroy the economy. What do you think Biden was doing? The whole 4 years, especially the last few months. He was trying to destroy everything so Trump would fail. These guys don't care if you starve. They'll take everything down. Hell, they'll take everything down to have their plans play out. They are screaming like crazy, trying to terrify everybody. That's the loosh. That's where the psychic loosh comes from. They're trying to get your energy. They feed off of it, and they want to push war. They want to get into Russia. They want their globalist plans to play out, and it's unraveling. And let's hope that Trump isn't in on it. This whole Canada, United States, 51st state stuff, that's a globalist plan, remember. And I have someone over on Rumble who's making the comment, he's talking about Khazar Mafia, Travis Best, and Russia. So I might have to check that out on a different a different podcast, Deep State Cabal, Khazarian Mafia. I've heard about this stuff before and with Ukraine. That might be for a different show, Travis. I might actually maybe stream on that next week. We got some connections there, but he's also talked about that Carney is there to sell Canada out to United States. Canada's already been sold out to China for a long time by Justin Trudeau and other politicians. They're all taking a carving out of Canada because Canada is not really strongly defended or owned by anybody. So Canada is in big trouble, big trouble, to say the least. They really are. I'm not sure how all of this stuff is going to play out, guys. We are done with that over there. We'll bring back the all-knowing Oracle Circle to talk to you guys before we sign out. Things are going crazy. Violence is on the streets. Mermaids are on the elites' plates for dinner. Canada is codependent. The EU is fucking retarded, and they want war, and they are calling peace bad and war good, just like 1984. Russia seems to be the only one with some common sense in the room. They're making sense to me. They're basically lining it up for what it is. And the Democrats, of course, are being violent again. People are dying. People are being attacked. People are being swatted. Places are being bombed, set on fire. We know they did this last time. We know that they're going to they'll do mass destruction. They'll do mass destruction. I hope that because Trump is cutting the funding, that things will not go their way. So I don't know what you think, guys. Lee Harrington says more people need to know about it. Khazaria is Ukraine. Yeah, the Khazarian Mafia in Ukraine and the Nazis. That might be a topic to talk about. I also want to talk about more MK Ultra. I want to talk about, because I talk about serial killers often and cult leaders. I want to get into John Wayne Gacy eventually. I'm trying to get this mini documentary done for subscribers on X about Ted Bundy and a place I went and filmed because he operated around that. But wow. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I don't have any guests lined up for next week. I'm going to try to get some people in. Ryder Lee, I'm going to try to have him back as soon as those JFK documents get out, if they ever do. Whether there's something there or not, or it's all BS, I'm going to try to get him on because he did a documentary that is available on Amazon Prime called JFKX. So I want to get him on to get him to do commentary about the JFK files and what's going on with that, MLK, RFK, all that stuff, if that ever comes out. I mean, we're waiting like crazy for that. And we will keep on top of this stuff happening with the European Union and Russia. I also want to do some shows on Russia culture because I did take a history class when I was in university when I was younger. About Russian history before World War II, went through all their monarchy. It's very fascinating. And currently, the way they tell you, what they tell you about Russia, that it's this horrible place and they're using tractor parts and they don't make anything, is a lie. You go and look at Moscow; it's actually quite modern. They are doing pretty good. Yeah, they get your loosh and they manipulate you. Exactly. Renee says, great show. Thank you, Renee, for showing up. Genocide, good stream. Thank you guys so much. It was wonderful to have you on here. I seem to talk better without a camera. I don't know. I just wasn't camera ready today. I had no interest in being on. But the magical ball can talk to you, and I will call it the Generation X Oracle. Sees everything. Knows everything. I don't know if that's true or not. But anyways, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. It's just about time and prepping. It takes me a long time to get some of these shows ready because the information, there's so much and there's so much more. But Khazarian Mafia, thank you so much, Travis Bear, for showing up on the Rumble stream and sending those links. Hopefully you'll subscribe to the show and we might actually talk about that one time. So, guys, I'm going to tune out here, go make some supper. I hope you guys have a wonderful night and you enjoyed the stream. Remember, genxonx.com. That's where all the links are. Audio links, podcast links, live stream links, Substack links. It's all there. I thank you guys so much for showing up, and I will see you next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Adios.